Hi guys, welcome to this video. This is Laura from Shamanic Self, and today I want to talk about a few topics such as the solar flare tech, piercings, the conception vessel, which has to do with that, and consent, and a few more things. But yeah, we should just dive in. Maybe start with the solar flare tech to get that out of the way just once and for all. So the solar flare, the Schumann resonance, all of those concepts, I think just the fact that New Agers mention them all the time. We recently just had a New Ager who was like focused all about, oh, we're solar humans and all of that. And she's all crazy and nuts about the solar flares, by the way. But just the fact that everyone who's in that scene constantly mentions them should probably give you an idea of that. Most people don't really question what's really behind it, and also that they're most likely not beneficial for us, but more working against us. And so I was like, okay, let's just read on this once and for all, because from my understanding, the solar flares is just another technology that the matrix machine where we're in, whatever technology they're using to control us, that they're using to bombard us with and really just get a whole bunch of stuff from our energy and energy body, and also deplete us of a lot of things on a physical basis, by the way. And so it's similar to the Schumann resonance. It's just another measurement that is being used to say, oh, our vibrations being raised, all of that. But no, actually, it's not just that. It's just another technology the controllers are using to control your actual energetic vibration, your pure natural vibration, not the fake 5D vibration, ascension vibration the new cage is talking about, but that they're actually using, the controllers are using this to keep you here or to keep you even more complacent. And so it all just ties into the same thing. The solar flare, the Schumann resonance, I know it's not the exact same thing, but it's all controlled by the same technology that they're using against us. Now, keep in mind, technology, magic, call it whatever, just because we don't know what it is, similar to the invisible coat that they already had in the military for decades and decades until they finally disclosed they had it, just because we don't know what it is that they have, or we didn't see the patent or whatever, doesn't mean they don't have it yet. It doesn't mean they haven't had it for at least 50, 60, 70, 100 years or even longer than that. I think the solar flare tech is a little bit older perhaps than the Schumann resonance tech that they're using, but what I did get on the solar flare tech is that it is a form of AI and technology. And so I'm just going to see what I wrote down here because I was reading on this. So the purpose, I was just asking, what are solar flares? What's the purpose? The purpose is draining and also making people more complacent. And then the images that I saw when I was literally just tapping into that, because I usually get these very vivid images. So the first thing that I saw was basically these waves, kind of like sound waves in the ocean. Have you ever seen a video like that when you have literally the waves from a whale or something just flashing at you, or just flashing in the video, the documentary you're seeing? So basically it's similar to that. I was seeing these waves of AI light, meaning artificial light. And I kept seeing this gray fog. So they're pumping it into this gray fog, which I interpret it as our atmosphere right now, that it's so polluted and so misty and so foggy that you barely can even really see. And so this is kind of the atmosphere that is not directly around us, that you can, when you step out, oh, that's the atmosphere, but it's the atmosphere that's kind of like over that. So possibly the atmosphere that planes puncture through to get to a certain height, but even the atmosphere that could be further above that. So I saw these waves of artificial light pumped into this gray fog. And then I also saw this one structure. So here in Brooklyn, they just built this one structure, I want to say 12 years ago, back around 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And it is pure AI. It's similar to, it's just like this AI thing. It's nothing natural. It's nothing beautiful, whatever. But I actually saw that or something similar to that. I realized it was a symbol So this AI structure that was zapping these light rays through the fog. So it's very much the machine that they're using. I'm not saying the machine is here in Brooklyn or anything, but what I interpret it as is they have these machines everywhere, and they're just zapping these solar flare light rays, or just this stuff, you know, that they call solar flares. They were zapping it through the atmosphere. And then this is interesting, I saw a spaceship, like a UFO, you know, this round saucer like thing above me, or above us, and again in the atmosphere, and it was basically pumping down all these things onto Earth. And that's, again, you know, it's pumping this flare energy, this solar flare energy, which, you know, how many suns do we have? 2, 3, 4, 5 at this point, so all artificial, pumping it into the atmosphere from above us. So it almost seems like we're being bombarded from different sides. When these solar flares happen, being bombarded on the same level we're on, we're being bombarded from above, which is, you know, that spaceship thing that I saw. And then we're being bombarded from wherever we are. There are these artificial constructs that are just zapping it through, especially if you're in a city, which is why when you're in a city, you might notice it more than you're in nature. But at this point, you're going to notice it wherever you are, even if you are in the most remote area of the world, because it's basically the entire atmosphere is so polluted at this point that you will notice it, unfortunately. And, you know, maybe if you found an area where you haven't noticed it, let us know. We'd all like to move there, but it did seem it's going to impact everyone to a certain degree. And so while they were doing that, while they were kind of zapping this, because I really saw it as zapping, you know, zapping like kind of like lightsaber rays, for the lack of a better word. If you can just imagine what I saw, I think you can just kind of like, you know, what you see in Star Wars or other sci-fi movies even. And there's a lot of truth to these movies, obviously, because it's all just disclosure that they're giving us, right? At the end of the day. So these zapping rays were really messing with people's energy bodies. They were also depriving them of magnesium, calcium, and sodium and other elements. Magnesium is pretty clear because we do all have a magnesium deficiency at this point. Most people do, at least. The calcium also makes sense, because when it's foggy and misty, you might have a vitamin D deficiency. And vitamin D, if you actually get certain things like milk and yogurt with all these calcium products, if you're craving that, it could all just tie into the same thing. The sodium was also interesting because, as you know, sodium salts, it's similar, right? It's not entirely the same thing, but salt is sodium. So they've been slowly and surely trying to get the salt out of our food for the past 10, 15 years, especially here in the US. I grew up in Germany, where salt is the diet in Germany by nature, not necessarily right now, but by nature, before they pulled off all the vegan agendas in Berlin and other cities, by nature, it's a very salt heavy diet that you have in those areas of the world. Also Austria, also the Balkans, all of that. And then other countries have more of a spicier diet, right? Like especially Latin America. But where I grew up, we had a lot of salt. And the first thing that I noticed when I came here was that, you don't have as much salt. You know, now you can decide how much salt you want in your dish, or you just kind of add it with the salt shaker on the table. And so I do feel they've been just trying to get the sodium out of our diet for a very long time, especially here in North America. And there must be a reason to it, because I do think salt can be you just need it, right? Your body needs it for hydration purposes or for electrolyte purposes too, possibly. But there were also other elements that they could be depriving us of through the solar flares. And I just saw it similar to electric shock waves that are being sent to us. That's what I got on the solar flare tech. If that resonates with you, let me know. And to me, it makes a lot of sense, because all these symptoms that we're having right after, you know, people are talking about energy hangovers, they're talking about headaches, migraines, all of that. Migraines is usually a magnesium deficiency or just some sort of deficiency in your body, not all the time, but a lot of times you can help it with the right diet, or you can help it with a few supplements here and there, just in general, you know, giving your body what it needs. And it's similar to the Schumann resonance. A lot of people have issues after that too. So if they're doing all that, to me, it makes a lot of sense. Then I received a message on one of my social medias in regards to piercings, which I personally was very resonating with because recently I removed one of my piercings and it was a very liberating feeling. So I received this message from, I think her name is Annie, I'm not sure, which she follows me on Instagram. And she was asking, "Hi, Laura, I think your channel is very interesting and I'm still new to it, but I appreciate you spreading the knowledge. Just curious, what do you think about ear piercings? I know you don't really like tattoos for spiritual reasons, but I'm wondering if there are any drawbacks to piercings, given that there's a lot of acupuncture points there, and some acupuncturists don't recommend it." Very interesting question. And this led me to actually look into every single piercing, or the main most popular piercings. And so I just want to share this with you, which is basically the Ren meridian line. Now, before we move into piercings, I'm not sure I have a video on this channel, but I had at least 1 or 2 videos on my old channel where I was talking about tattoos. And I don't want to make this video about tattoos, but what I do want to say about tattoos, just a few things. So first and foremost, there are different ways you can have a tattoo. I know there are people that have their own handmade tattoos. I don't know if they poke them somehow or how they got them, but most often people went to a tattoo parlor or a tattoo specialist or a friend even who they got their tattoo from. I personally don't have any single tattoo. I've never resonated with tattoos. And when I was younger, or even up until recently, I really liked looking at tattoos when other people had them, because it's just the artwork in and of itself, right? It's pretty amazing, like what some people get. Not everyone, but some people have amazing tattoos and others just have silly tattoos. So it's a form of creativity and self-expression in that form. What you do have to consider with tattoos, first and foremost, is the ink. The ink can be very toxic. And I do know there are different types of tattoos. And so if you're already talking about putting something in your body, a tattoo is going to stay there forever, meaning your body is going to absorb that type of ink that you're putting there. It's not the same as a toxic piece of clothing that you wear, even though we should all be replacing our clothing with non-toxic materials. But with a tattoo, it's literally in your body and it goes through your bloodstream and everything, because as we know, your skin bleeds when that tattoo comes on there. Second factor is the person who puts that tattoo on you, which I personally find almost worse than putting ink in my skin that I don't really want there to begin with. But what I find worse is a tattoo artist who has a very dark aura, very dark energy field. And I'm not saying this because I don't like tattoos, whatever. I'm just saying this because I've made a lot of observations over the years, just by having friends who got tattoos and kind of accompanying them to their tattoo appointment and interacting with tattoo people. There's this weird darkness over that entire industry. A lot of it intersects with goth and tongue splitting sometimes, not all the time. I don't want to overgeneralize again, because I know a lot of people get upset when I speak up against tattoos. But there's this weird dark energy in a lot of tattoo parlors, at least in my opinion. I don't know why. It's just, a lot of them also like to dress a certain way, like very punk-like and goth-like. I'm not opposed to that, but there's an energetic component to that. And so a lot of these tattoo artists, they put their energy onto your artwork, which is your tattoo on your body. If you hand poked your tattoo, you have your own tattoo, that's your energy, obviously. There's something else you would need to consider. But if another person goes there and does a tattoo on your body, you're kind of stuck with that for a little bit. Most recent experience I had was about 2 years ago when a friend went to a tattoo artist. She wanted a tiny, tiny tattoo here on the wrist. And we actually had planned to get that together like a few years before that. And then I was like, no, I don't really want a tattoo at all. So I went with her just for, just, okay, I'll go with you, sure. And she got a tiny tattoo here. It turns out the tattoo turned out way larger than she wanted it, almost twice as large, which is a pretty significant difference because it's on your body. And I could tell how her energy was just, it kind of dropped right after that tattoo, because she didn't get the tattoo she wanted. The guy who gave her the tattoo didn't even care that it was way too large than she wanted. And now she either has to remove it or kind of figure out how to make it smaller or something, put something around it or whatever, because she really doesn't like it after all. And so that experience just showed me once again how weird that entire industry in and of itself is. I'm sure there are lovely tattoo artists out there, but to be honest with you, I haven't met that many. It's just weird. I don't know. It's very strange. I just keep analyzing people's energies who are in that industry over and over again, and I don't like it. I really don't like it. Nothing against you if you got your tattoo, if you're happy, all the best to you. But anyhow, let's move on to piercing. So I want to pull up a few articles here while I'm just reading them and showing the main meridian line. First and foremost, and tattoos and piercings are a little bit related to each other because you go to the same tattoo and piercing parlor, usually at least. When you get like a belly button piercing, when you get a underlip or whatever piercing, it's the same, right? It's like a tattoo parlor. At least in Germany it was, here in New York it is, I don't know, in other areas. So piercings in certain areas like the belly button, the chin, the tongue, among other parts, have been found to have negative effects. Belly button piercings wreak havoc onto the entire central nervous system because they are located on the Ren meridian channel, that line right here. This is the main line. There are many lines. If you go according to Chinese meridian lines and acupuncture, which acupuncture is based on this, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines. And I personally am really interested in that because I have done acupuncture in the past, like someone has done acupuncture on me, and I did find it to be very effective, by the way. So this entire Chinese meridian line system has always been very interesting to me. If you look at it right here, it starts down here where the private parts are. Some people even tattoo as well, but pierce their private parts, right? Like we all know what type of piercings there are. And then it goes here to the navel, the belly button, very popular tattoo for the past, since the 90s already, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it's still popular, but it definitely was for at least 20 years. Then you have here the chest area. Some people get their nipples pierced, which is not really on that line, but it might impact it. And then when you go here, this is the chin, and then you have the lip area, and then also the nose is kind of right in there too. And then you have the eyebrows, obviously, another very important point for some piercings at least. So just get back to this. Another thing to consider, placement does matter when it comes to piercings, for better or worse. Metal is known to alter the energy in our bodies, and this is no exception when it comes to piercings. The effect on our health will be greatly impacted if the metal is located near a meridian. This has been studied by scientists and doctors. Piercings can also stop the flow of our energy through the meridians, which can cause pain and make us feel stagnant. When our energy is imbalanced, we can experience low immunity, which can eventually lead to chronic disorders. So with the metal area, it has to also do with electromagnetic radiation, which is all around us thanks to the modern connected world. We are constantly being exposed to EMR because of our phones, Wi-Fi signals, and everything around us. This makes wearing metal jewelry and piercings risky because metal is a conductor of electricity and attracts the EMRs to our bodies. EMRs affect the body's tissues by inhibiting our DNA repair process, and they can also interfere with our melatonin production. Could explain some sleepless nights for a few people. The piercing location, meaning the navel piercing, has also been linked to MS, infertility, and even endometriosis. Chin piercings can affect our hormones, cause us to grind our teeth, and interfere with our salivary gland. These issues can lead to digestion problems, and the most common issues reported by people with tongue piercings are increased acne, acid reflux, and constipation. If piercings are on an actual meridian point, it can affect the energy in the body. Each acupressure point is connected to an emotion, mental state, and metabolic function. Piercing a point disturbs the balance of each of these, which is basically, if you have a piercing, it's there for a very long time. There was something else here on earlobe. So the body and acupuncture. And also she and your energy, which she is life force energy. Here's something on the ear piercing. One of the most common, and I have ear piercings, by the way. I have two. I'm not wearing any earrings right now, but I actually didn't get these until I was a teenager. And one of my sisters got hers when she was very young, like 5 or 6. Now, what I also had on this ear was like these two in the upper lobe. And I only had those for like a week or two because they got infected and I had to take them out. And that was when I was a teenager. I think it was like 16. And it was so weird because I think I literally got, once I got them, aside from the infection, which happened a little after that, I almost felt sicker after getting them. Like I remember I was lying in my bed way more and just kind of feeling depressed and sicker after getting them. And I'm like, wait, why did I get these piercings? They don't make me feel happy. So with the ear piercing, one of the most common piercings, it starts very young. Even infants are pierced in their ear. Parts of the ear piercing includes the lobe, the root, the tragus, the cartilage, the list goes on. With that being said, each of these piercings has a direct effect on the acupuncture points of the human body and one's chi, life force energy. There's some fascinating research and studies coming out with the ear. For example, the ears are especially packed with acupuncture points. And acupuncturists consider the ear a microsystem with a point for everywhere on the body. You have the lobe. So the lobe in the third hole can be depression, certain acupuncture points they use. And the first hole has to do with eyesight, and possibly being able to improve your eyesight when you do acupuncture there. With the stretched lobes, spiritual heightening, and then you have in different areas of the ear, the stress remover, the appetite control, and then the cartilage, insomnia, and allergies. You can treat allergies with acupuncture, which I know some people have done. Eyebrow piercing. Places on, and you know, it's also interesting because I knew someone who had an eyebrow piercing and I always wondered what the point of it was. But places on the body that are harmful to have piercings include the eyebrow, the mouth, the tongue, and other parts of the face or the body. Eyebrow piercings are a no-go as well. An eyebrow piercing actually results in an increased ego. Illusory energies are created, and lastly, the same effects of tongue piercings, which is known as one of the worst places to get a piercing in light of acupuncture points. So there's a lot of sensitivity on your tongue, which makes a lot of sense. And I will never understand why people split their tongues. That used to be in at one point too. Lip piercing, a very common trend among teens. Well, at least used to be, right? The areas affected through lip piercings are stomach, intestines, livers, spleens, and colon. Yeah, colon makes a lot of sense. I think colon is somewhere around, if I'm not mistaken. So these are major functioning parts of your body, and through piercings in these areas, just like the belly, the tongue, the chin, and other areas, the metal truly affects the meridians and flow of energy in the body. If you're thinking about getting this piercing, make sure to take this into consideration. Now, with the navel piercing too, I read this one article where they were basically saying this one girl couldn't really move all, like she couldn't stretch all the way to the ground, but once they removed it, she was able to stretch to the ground again, like kind of if you're just trying to reach the ground with your hands or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, it's actually really interesting. So it could impact your mobility too. You have the governing and the conception vessels, and the conception vessel is actually the one, if you got a navel piercing, the conception vessel is going to be impacted by that. So this is, once again, acupuncture, again, meridian lines. So for women, if you get that, it could literally impact your fertility or infertility. And I'm sure there are so many other points that are impacted. Now, I just recently removed, I had one piercing aside from my ears, and then the two here, which, you know, were basically not really there. They were only there for like 2 weeks or so. I had one more piercing, a body piercing, And I had to do this whole healing journey on that too. I've done a lot of healing journeys lately just because there's so many things I feel that are going on right now where we really just have to prepare ourselves mentally. So I went back to this one time because I got that piercing when I was 18. Literally, when I turned 18, it was this huge deal with like, oh, we're 18 now. Because in Europe, you always start drinking earlier. So it's not like, oh, now we're free, we can start drinking. And it's just, it was like, we're 18, we can either get a tattoo or we can get a piercing. That was the thought process behind me and my then best friend. So we decided, okay, we're both going to get the same piercing and we're just going to have it. And in hindsight, I don't even know why I got it, honestly. I had it for way too long because I just recently removed it and I felt I needed to remove it right away. From the moment I got it, I never fully resonated with it, but I still stuck to it because I was like, oh, it's it's hip. The other gender is going to like it. It's just going to, like, how you are as a teenager, you think you're doing something cool. So we end up getting our piercings together. And I just remember being in this piercing tattoo parlor and not liking it. I'm like, why am I here? I don't like the person who's giving me this piercing at all. I don't like his energy. Like, even back then, I could already pick up on, ugh, this is just really depressing. And we both get it. It didn't take long at all to get it. But what should have been a sign for me, for 18-year-old me, was 2 weeks after that, it was already started getting infected too. Like, it started getting a bit red and it's kind of like pussy, it's kind of like this this just infected fluid that was flowing out. And I was like, oh, is this a sign that I should just remove it or should I just keep it in? And I ended up keeping it in. I went back to the parlor, the tattoo parlor, and the guy was like, well, if it's gonna start to look worse in a few days, then you should probably take it out. But it just stays the same or it heals up. Just keep it, because at this point, it's either keep it or don't keep it. And otherwise, you would have had to put like a whole new piercing hole and everything in there. And I was like, well, I do want to have it since I already spent the money and got it. And it was this huge ordeal. So I ended up keeping it for way longer than I ever really wanted to keep it. And when I did this healing journey recently, a few weeks back on it, like once I removed it, I was like, yeah, I really wonder how it impacted me energetically and also just in general, emotionally with the body. I went back to the day that me and my best friend, which our friendship didn't even last that long. It only lasted a couple of years because that was literally that type of teenage friendship, right? You do all the crappy stuff together. We had some good times too, but we had more crappy times than good times. And then once the purpose is done, it's done. So I went back to this entire thing of us walking into the tattoo place and me energetically actually already knowing that I didn't want it. I was just doing it because of this group pressure or because my best friend really wanted it and we had kind of promised each other we would be doing it. And I had to do this entire thing, just having to really change the energy of that situation to find proper healing with it. But it was pretty intense because I started realizing that that's where a lot of issues possibly started, energetically and possibly physically too, even though I don't have that many physical issues. But I do have to say, once I removed it, there were certain points in my body that felt much better. I was having pain in certain parts. And I was like, wow, once I removed it, the pain, it wasn't entirely gone, but it certainly felt better and more manageable. So that was interesting to observe and witness, and just to also go back to that circumstance of something you did when you were a teenager and be like, oh, these are really the reasons I did it with. And it also made me reconsider a lot of things that I did that I actually didn't really want to do. And so now it's this entire spiral of how much healing can you really do? Like, how much of your past do you really want to erase or rewrite, or how much do you just want to move on from it and learn from the lessons, right? Which is kind of what I posted recently on my community tab. I was like, what's the quote that I put there? If you go back to fix all the mistakes you ever made, you'll erase yourself. So you just gotta cut your losses from that. So the conception vessel and piercings can be very related, especially if it's a navel piercing in that area, or probably also a private part piercing, I want to say. Now, one more thing I want to mention is consent. So similar to how we always have these pop-ups, we value your privacy, you know, accept all cookies, all trackers, all whatevers. That's similar to how we energetically are giving consent, right? Just like all these, especially when you're looking at a website from an EU country, that's more likely when it pops up, you know, kind of like, oh, you have to click the agree or more options. And when you do the more options, it takes more time. Then more options, no, I reject all, or I only have the functional cookies or whatever. Similar to that, you really have to, you know, kind of wage your battle of how much time do I want to spend on this until I don't want to look at this website or this issue anymore. So just like all these pop-ups always come along, and you always need to reject them or fiddle with the settings on them. That's how the agendas are also tracking us, you know, that they put on us, and sometimes several different times a day. So it's like, oh, they put a tracker on you, or you always have to, like when you see something pop up in a commercial or something, they're trying to put an agenda on you, and you need to energetically disagree with that or just reject it. And this is like several times a day. So it gets very tiring to do that. And that's the thing that I wanted to do on consent, which I found it was so funny when I was thinking about consent, and then all these pop-ups just appear. And I'm like, yeah, that's literally how it is in real life. We have to go through several pop-ups, energetic pop-ups, or just these boxes every single day, and really consciously reject them, or just work with protection techniques for, you know, our energy not to be constantly zapped, or us not being lured into all these agendas that we don't want to be a part of, you know, like the trans agenda and all of that too, or the ADHD agenda and everything. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that for this video. I thought the meridian points were pretty interesting for some people to know. And yeah, let us know if you have any experiences with piercings or tattoos or consent or solar flares. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I really do appreciate every single one of you. Comment below. Talk to you then. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful one.